Mr. Houck's case, it's the sentence of the court that he be confined in a penal institution, there and to remain for a period of life upon his conviction to murder, principal, or accomplice.
The last words Brooks Houck heard in the courtroom today. Bardstown, Kentucky's biggest murder mystery now has some closure. After more than 10 years, the killer of Crystal Rogers gets life in prison. It's a case we have followed very closely from the beginning. Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us for this WHAS 11 News special report on WHAS 11 Plus. I'm Doug Proffitt. In the town that has struggled so much with this lingering murder case, the judge sentenced Brooks Houck today and one of his accomplices in the crime, Joseph Lawson. The judge sentencing Brooks Houck to life in prison. Under the law, he is eligible for parole. We'll be talking about that a little later. Joseph Lawson was sentenced to 25 years for his crimes. We're joined now by WHAS 11's Alexandra Goldberg. She covered the Brooks Houck trial and was there for the sentencing, which lasted about an hour today in Bardstown. Alexandra, you heard from about 6 different people giving direct testimony today, looking directly at Brooks Houck. Who was the most powerful in your thoughts today?
Doug, all 6 victim impact statements were incredibly powerful. As you mentioned, they were very direct, speaking directly to Brooks Houck, and of course, very emotional. Some standout moments, though, from these victim impact statements was, of course, Sherry Ballard, who is Crystal Rogers' mother. One sound bite stood out to me. She said, quote, "My only regret is that Kentucky doesn't have the death penalty, but death is too good for you." Again, here, just an example of how direct she was, looking directly at Brooks Houck as she's speaking. She spoke for also the longest amount of time, but there were several other family members, children. Of course, Sherry Ballard spoke, siblings and other relatives who gave really emotional, but of course, looking directly into Brooks Houck, his eyes. Take a listen.
I pray that one day you will grow a heart and have the decency to tell me where my daughter is so we can have a proper burial for her. You owe that much to your own son, and my daughter deserves that. Her kids deserve that.
My mom didn't deserve any of this. My mom didn't get to see me go to high school, proms, graduate. She won't see me get married, have children.
You looked me straight in the eye and you smiled and said, "They did such a piss poor job. They could step right over your sister and never even knew she was there." Well, let me tell you something. They did such a great job, they put you in jail for the rest of your life.
I pray you never see the light of day.
And just to give you a look into the courtroom, it was a packed house. On the Commonwealth side, there were many of Crystal Rogers' family members, all dressed in pink, which is Crystal's favorite color. And then on the defense side, there were several of Brooks Houck's family members there, including his mother, his sister, and his current girlfriend. Brooks Houck was dressed in a striped jumpsuit, and Joseph Lawson was dressed in orange. Doug.
Andrew, thank you very much. We're going to be joining you again in just a few minutes as we continue with our special report here on WHAS 11 Plus. I'm joined now by WHAS 11 News legal analyst Nick Mudd of the Mudd Law Group in Louisville. He is back with us as he's been for the past year talking about this case. Nick was also a prosecutor in Louisville with the Violent Crimes Unit. Nick, let's talk about the sentencing today. The judge following exactly what that jury in July recommended for both Brooks Houck and Joseph Lawson. He didn't take a day off of this sentence.
Right, and I'll be honest, Doug, no surprises here. Serious case, hard-fought case, you know, a case with all eyes in the community on it, and a homicide case at that. So we have to keep that in mind. And I will tell you, I mean, in my experience, 15 years of practicing criminal law, defense and prosecution, I mean, I can't even remember when I've seen, except one time on a homicide that was manslaughter, that I've seen a judge deviate. But in a case like this, I called it from the beginning. I told you there's no way that judge was going to deviate at all whatsoever. And, you know, he imposed what the jury decided. He respected the jury's decision. And it is really, I'd say, less than 1% of the time a judge would go against what a jury decides.
Tell me how common life sentences are here in Kentucky, as juries recommend them. But how common is it for a judge to follow a life sentence and give it to somebody?
So for a jury itself to give a life sentence on a case involving not a child, not really a sex offense or something like that, It's fairly uncommon, to be quite honest. It happens, you know, but it is a low percentage of the time. Usually in a case like this, we have usually a number of years are assessed. So I think this kind of life sentence here really sends a message. I mean, it sends a message. The jury was disgusted with Brooks Houck. They were disgusted by what happened. I think they were disgusted by the amount of time that took so long to get him prosecuted. And certainly, you know, they sent that message to the judge to say, hey, we don't want this man to ever get out of prison.
So you and I were going over the timeline. Crystal, of course, disappeared on that 4th of July weekend of 2015. It was Sheriff Ed Mattingly at the time down there in Nelson County who on October 16th, 2015, that's the first time he announced that Brooks Houck, the ex-boyfriend, was the chief suspect in this. You know, we talk about closure. This is such an important day for the town of Bardstown, for the community of Bardstown, even the state of Kentucky, which has followed this so closely, and the family of Crystal Rogers. But do they have closure? I've always been hesitant to say that because we don't know what happened to Crystal Rogers. Her remains have never been found. There is no weapon in this case, and we don't know a motive for her killing. In fact, Sherry Ballard looked directly at Brooks Houck today and said, would you please tell me where my daughter is?
Right, and you know, it's one of those situations to where we thought at the beginning of this case, we moved back 2 years ago, that, hey, we're going to get some answers here. Maybe they know where the body is. We were waiting. We kept waiting and waiting, and that information never came out. And, you know, I think there is a little bit of closure for Sherry Ballard and her family, and my heart goes out to them. They have been through the ringer for a decade now over this. And certainly, you know, justice was served. But at the end of the day, we don't know where Crystal's body is. We don't know how she was killed. We don't know the cause of death. We really don't know what happened specifically other than what was presented to the jury. And so I think it's a situation to where, unfortunately for the Ballard family, they have more questions than answers here. All they know is the man that did it is convicted and the people involved were convicted. But in terms of the specifics, the things they want to know, the details, and specifically where Crystal's body is, you know, unfortunately for them, sadly, those questions have not been answered. And as you said, Doug, she looked right at Brooks Houck and basically said, please, please, you know, essentially give me the closure I want. Tell me, where is my daughter buried?
Of course, this is one of the 3 Bardstown murder mysteries that we all believe may be connected, going back to the killing of Bardstown police officer Jason Ellis, who was on his way home on that holiday weekend, and then the killing of Tommy Ballard, Crystal's father, who was leading the search, had launched the search when he believed nobody was paying attention. He was killed there in 2016, right before Thanksgiving. And as we look ahead to how this case got solved, does it just amaze you that it came out of nowhere right after the Labor Day holiday of 2023 when we learned that a man named Joseph Lawson had been indicted for a crime in the weekend of 2015, holiday weekend of 2015. It came right down to him. Yeah, and you know, it was kind of I tell people, this case was a difficult case though. Moving forward with other unindicted co-conspirators, people have to keep that in mind. This was an investigation that, as you said, Doug, went on 8 years. I mean, essentially from 2015 to 2023 until they decided to indict, I think, Joseph Lawson to start. And so, you know, it was not an easy case. This was an uphill battle for the prosecution. And I know people talk about, hey, are they going to charge, you know, Brooks Houck's brother, his mother? And so, but you have to keep in mind the prosecution, you had an all-star team of prosecutors here, okay? You had Teresa Lawson, you had Jim Lasowski, he is the godfather of prosecution in the state of Kentucky. I mean, if you mention the best of prosecutors, Jim was a mentor to me. We tried multiple murder cases together. Well known in Louisville courtrooms. You know, yeah, he's been in federal courtrooms, state courtrooms. And you had Shane Young, who right now, Shane is kind of the premier trial lawyer of prosecutors, I would say, in Kentucky. He is the pinnacle right now. He's won Prosecutor of the Year at least once, I know, probably multiple. So you're dealing with people who, you know, at the top of their game, but this was a case that they didn't just rush to indictment. I mean, I think they held that case at least for a few years, reviewing evidence, you know, investigating. I mean, over and over, just going through and, you know, was it tetrabytes of data? So,
you know, this was a very, very circumstantial, difficult case for the prosecution. It was an uphill battle, but ultimately they got a conviction. And so the question going forward is that investigation going to shift to Nick Houck? Is it going to shift to Rosemary Houck? Where will the investigation go now that the main three suspects are essentially convicted and the main suspect is sent away for life?
I do want to take a moment at this part of our special report to bring everybody up to date on where we stand. You know, today's sentencing was 10 years in the making from July 3rd, 2015, when Crystal Rogers first disappeared. WHS 11 photojournalist Jessica Farley is taking us back through the long investigation.
I knew from the moment she went missing that she was not coming back.
There's certain things that people do when they exist on this earth. She has vanished.
Crystal Rogers missing since 2015. Her boyfriend the main suspect, but no arrests.
Our whole world has changed.
I can't understand how you live with the mother of your baby for 3.5 years and you don't report her missing.
God can make anything happen. I'm going to keep my faith and I'm going to pray that they find my daughter. At this point, I want closure.
I'm kind of facing reality.
I think it's safe to say that she's dead.
A major arrest in the Crystal Rogers case.
Former boyfriend Brooks Houck.
Houck is charged with murder and tampering with physical evidence in the death of Rogers.
They have worked this case over and over, trying to find new leads and new evidence.
That's what got us here. That's what got me indicted. The governor and the attorney general assigning a special prosecutor to get this done, solved, and over with. They're sick of it.
In regard to Commonwealth versus Brooks William Houck, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder, principal, or accomplice.
She was a great mom, and she did not deserve what was done to her at all.
I can't believe that I'm in here. I cannot believe it at all. There's a good chance that I'm going to die in here. Do you understand that?
That brings us back to our ongoing coverage from the city of Bardstown. Where does the case go from here? We want to go back to WHS 11's Alexandra Goldberg, who covered the sentencing today and asked that question actually to attorneys. What did they tell you, Alexandra?
Yeah, Doug, you're right. Both defendants do have a right to appeal. The case would actually go straight up to the Kentucky Supreme Court. Robert Boyd, who is counsel for Joseph Lawson, told me yesterday that if his motions were denied, if the sentence was read, then he would immediately file an official appeal. He doubled down on that today, saying that he will appeal, and even saying that as of today, Joseph Lawson maintains his innocence. Take a listen to our interview from just a couple hours ago. You were sitting right next to Joey Lawson when the sentencing was delivered. What was his initial reaction?
When the sentencing was delivered, Mr. Lawson was expecting it. Ultimately, we're glad to have some finality in this matter, and so is Mr. Lawson, so that we can move on through the appellate process. Appellate processes is going to get appealed directly to the Kentucky Supreme Court. They are slow, they are monotonous, and especially in this case with such a large volume of discovery for an appellate lawyer to have to work through. I wouldn't be surprised if this took a year or more, 2-3 years. So it is going to live on in the appellate court system, and that goes back to what I was saying about the book is still writing itself. So whether this comes back on appeal or not, I can't guarantee. However, today was not the complete end of it.
So talk to me about the appeal. As we were speaking yesterday, you said that you will immediately file a formal appeal.
Yes, the judge signed that today on the record. That will basically designate counsel from Department of Public Advocacy to represent him through the appellate process. So we've got the ball rolling in that manner.
You said a quote to me yesterday. You said that this chapter is done, but the book is still writing itself.
That is exactly what I said, and it's completely true. I don't know what the end of this case as a whole is going to look like. There are so many moving parts, and the book is still writing itself.
We know that this sentencing was delayed because of Joey's health problems. Is he recovering? Is he spending a lot of his time in medical facilities? Can you catch us up there?
He's stable at this point, and he's basically at the best condition that he's going to be given the medical conditions that he has.
Do you have any words for, of course, this is sort of the culmination of a 10-year-long investigation. Do you have any words to Crystal's family, to anyone else involved in this?
I said it during my closing that my heart aches for the Ballard family, and I do mean that. I understand why they might have negative feelings about myself or co-counsel. However, I believe that there are a lot of unanswered questions that remain in this case, and I do hope that they do finally receive full justice at some point in the future. I'm just not sure if we arrive there today or not.
And you were expecting this maximum penalty?
Yes, as the judge said on the record, it's very rare for him to deviate from a jury recommendation, and we were fully expecting that he would sentence Joey to the maximum 25 years that the jury recommended.
And to this day, does Joseph Lawson stand by his innocence?
100%.
Alexandra, interesting interview with the attorney there, but Sherry Ballard did not hold back. I mean, she really criticized those attorneys, even to their faces, as she was looking at Brooks Houck today, saying, how you found an attorney to take your case is hard to understand. How did that go over in the courtroom today? Did you watch the reactions when that was being said?
Yeah, of course, Doug. Brooks Houck really did not react to any of the 6 victim impact statements. And you bring up a good point. So Sherry, of course, said, how could you spend all this money to hire defense counsel? Crystal's brother actually doubled down on that. Casey Ballard saying all of this money that you spent on defense counsel could have been spent paying child support, which is a theme that we saw throughout these victim impact statements. And this was, they were going at Brooks Houck directly. Family members were speaking directly to counsel, but also some of Brooks Houck's family members, his mother, his sister, and his girlfriend, speaking directly to them as well.
Of course, cameras allowed in the courtroom for the sentencing. The judge banned the cameras for the trial of Steve Lawson, the first co-conspirator, and then, of course, the trial of Brooks Houck and Joseph Lawson. I want to talk about what Sherry Ballard had to say. She really zeroed in on Brooks about Eli, the son that he had with Crystal Rogers. We're really trying to get to the moment of a motive in this case. Sherry basically came very close to saying that she was still searching for the real reason why, but Eli was front and center in this case today.
Doug, absolutely front and center, not just for Sherry Ballard and her victim impact statements, but nearly all family members brought up the relationship between Crystal, Brooks, and Eli. I'll give you an example here. Brooke Bryan, who's Crystal Rogers' sister, said, you will never be a good father. You ruined his life. She goes on to say, you are a terrible father. You took his whole family away so you could have him yourself. And I think you're right. His family members are trying to get to the bottom of what a potential motive for Brooks Houck could have been.
Now, when it was over, you were able to watch the body language as the family members left. And of course, we did hear more people talking out into the hallway there outside the courtroom. What were you able to pick up from what you've seen in the past? After the verdict came down in July, there was that massive rally on the courthouse in Bardstown. Huge crowds of people who came in from Team Crystal wearing pink there.
Yeah, again, you bring up a great point. From my experience during the trial on verdict day, there was such a sense of everyone was, anticipating what the verdict was going to be as it came down. This time around, I think several family members were definitely very forward with pleading for the maximum punishment, but we also heard from Mike Ballard, who said this is what he was expecting is the maximum punishment. But as I spoke to family members afterward, they just said that there is a sense of relief. Of course, both defendants getting the maximum punishment, Brooks' life and Joseph Lawson 25 years. But one thing that they reiterated to me over again was, of course, this brings them justice in the legal system, in the justice system. But what will actually bring the family peace is knowing where Crystal's remains are.
I know you've been in contact with Sherry Ballard. You've had several conversations with her privately. Is she expected to say anything more about this, or is she just very concerned about appeals and what could happen legally down the line?
Yeah, the answer to that is pretty uncertain at this point. As we all know, many of the Ballard family members and Crystal Rogers' family have not spoke directly to the media in any interviews. Today was the first time we heard Sherry Ballard speak for several minutes at a time, and we're able to, of course, get that on camera and share it with our viewers. But moving forward, I think it will be up to her and her level of comfortability doing these interviews to reflect on these past 10 years and continue to fight for justice for Crystal. But that's going to be left up to her and how comfortable she is, especially with these appeals in the future.
Alexandra, thank you very much. Let's bring it back here to WHS 11 legal analyst Nick Mudd, who is joining me again as we continue our special report for you. We're wrapping up the final sentencing for Brooks Houck, life in prison. Joseph Lawson, 25 years in prison for his role in the killing of Crystal Rogers. We say it's not over with yet. Of course, there's the civil case coming up. And the fascinating thing about a civil case, you and I have talked about this, is I go back to the O.J. Simpson murder case, and then the civil case afterwards brought out so much new information that really surprised a lot of people. Could we see the same thing happen in this? Could we learn about a possible motive out of the civil case as it's tried?
Absolutely. And so in a civil case, the big difference is a criminal case has rights that are attached to the defendant. For instance, a defendant has a right not to testify. There's a lot of rules that protect the defendant's rights. There's a whole lot of evidence that just doesn't come in that context. Civil case is entirely different. It has its own set of rules. It's much more liberal and much more allowing with evidence to come in from both sides. So it wouldn't surprise me if, like you said, years ago, the O.J. Simpson verdict, you know, we saw that in the criminal case, then we saw the civil, and it's like, well, why did they never hear this? Why did they never hear that? That could certainly happen here, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happens, and I'd say it probably will happen if it goes to trial on the civil end, which it probably will.
We go back to the phone calls that we got that Brooks Houck actually recorded the day of the verdict, where he was rushing to try to protect his assets, telling family members and his own sister, start selling this off because they're going to come after the assets in the civil case.
Right, and I'll tell you two things about that call. Number one, and most importantly, he thought he was going to walk out the door. I mean, I truly think if he thought he was going to get convicted,
you could hear it in his voice.
He would have sold those assets well before this, but he didn't. He truly thought, I'm walking out the door. There's no way they're going to convict me. And so, you know, secondly, now we're having hiding of assets, which, you know, somebody could be held in contempt. I think there was a freeze on, there was a motion filed immediately in the civil case to freeze the assets, to say, hey, nothing can be bought and sold. So that, you know, that caused the civil lawyers involved to preemptively do that right after that came out.
Interesting point you make. Let's talk about that because you and I haven't talked about this. So you believe that once we listened to that phone call and he sounded the way he did, that was because he actually believed he was walking free and that was truly a stunning moment for him, that guilty verdict.
Oh, absolutely. I think you hear the tone of the call. I mean, Doug, I'm an attorney. You're not, but your opinion on that is just as valuable as mine. There's no difference. You are a regular person hearing that. You had the same reaction I did, which is like, hey, you clearly didn't think you were going to stay in jail. I mean,
I thought it sounded oddly naive as part of the conversation.
It was, he almost seemed, but just surprised, like, hey, start moving this stuff. But as if he thought he was going to get convicted and there was a civil case, he would have transferred that stuff months or years, you know, a year and a half ago.
So what about those phone calls? I mean, they were recorded.
Right.
The judge heard them. He shut that down immediately. He froze those assets.
Absolutely. And that should come in the civil case. If they have to try that, certainly they're going to say, hey, not only is it because that will come in that he was found guilty in the criminal context, but it'll also come in and say, hey, not only is he guilty, here's the assets that he's hiding so that people can't get to those. I mean, what looks more culpable than that?
So is the civil case just going to come down to a financial judgment here? Because obviously he's in prison for the rest of his life. And would he be brought out of prison to testify in the civil case?
He could be. I mean, he would have a right to be there. And that has happened. I've seen it happen before in a couple of civil cases, not ones I was involved, but just what I observed. But yeah, I mean, he's got a right to be there and right to defend his assets. And certainly, I mean, this is not an individual who was not successful in business. My understanding is he owns several rental homes, owns several businesses. So, I mean, financially, he certainly had means. And I think that, you know, that is something that will also be discussed in the civil case, and things that have to be disclosed are financial disclosures.
Could he be more motivated to testify in this financial case than he was obviously in the murder case? Could we hear from Brooks Houck for the first time?
We could. You know, I would say if I'm his lawyer and I still have an appeal pending, which is with the Kentucky Supreme Court, and then later there will probably be a habeas corpus petition to the United States Supreme Court, I'm not letting him take the stand until all of that has run its course. That being said, you know, I've seen defendants do crazier things, and so I wouldn't be surprised.
So let's go over that ground again. You believe he was successful in business? Is that the way?
It's my understanding that he had
was. Okay.
Lots of rental houses, and you know, I mean, I'm not making a judgment on him as a person. My understanding was he owned several different homes, several properties, I think business properties, and did pretty well for himself.
And if you can hire Brian Butler in Louisville, one of the top attorneys in town, of course.
Yeah, not just
not
Brian.
as high as you.
Well, I know Brian is a mentor to me, so I have Brian is a top-notch lawyer. Remember, he didn't just hire Brian, though. He hired Brian's whole legal team, and then he brought in Steve Schroering as well. Steve's top-notch. Steve defends about every officer that gets in trouble in the city. I mean, he is a great lawyer as well. I assume both, I don't know their fees, but assume, you know, high-powered lawyers that cost a lot of money to litigate. And this case went on, so I mean, I can't even imagine the billable hours between both of them in this case. I mean, several tens of thousands, if not higher.
Thank you, Nick, for your perspective. And before we leave, we have one more family member to hear from, of course, the brother of Tommy Ballard. Tommy Ballard, one of the Bardstown murder mysteries still unsolved, shot and killed in November of 2016 as he was getting ready to go on a hunting trip with his grandson. Today, outside that courtroom, his brother, Mike Ballard, had this to say.
Sherry and her kids have been through hell for the last 10 years, and today, justice was served. And you can look on my truck at the sign, and to me, that is what justice looks like.
Ballard speaking there, and that does bring us to the end of our WHAS 11 News Special Report. We, of course, will be staying on top of any appeals and any possible future breaks or arrests in the unsolved Bardstown murder mysteries. We have followed Crystal Rogers for 10 years. The motive in this terrible crime, still unknown, but finally justice for her family and Bardstown. I'm Doug Proffitt for Nick Mudd and our entire WHAS 11 News team. We thank you very much for joining us for this special presentation on WHAS 11 Plus.